Hey everyone, welcome to another devlog for Vampires vs Aliens. Not a huge update today in terms of the actual updates to the game code, though there are some, and I will show you in a moment. But I have a bigger update about how we're going to go forward with this, showing the progress, what the intent is for V.3, and sort of taking this really up a notch. So let's talk first about the content, which I think is probably the most exciting stuff. You'll notice now we have mana. When I fire my attack, you'll see it slowly starts to drain. Now, this skill right now isn't actually draining my mana. You'll notice it's getting to 120 and then it's actually just stopping. So it's not doing it. But if I now take a skill, so for example, this one here, multiple projectiles, it's giving me a 40% mana penalty. Now when I fire the skill, although I'm firing more projectiles, I'm now running out of mana. So this is going to at first, this probably just seems like an annoying thing for the player, but I promise you that there's going to be a bunch of things in the game to help mitigate this. It's not meant to be a pain point, it's actually more meant to be a tool for solving problems. So, for example, one of the intended skills will be something that drains all of your mana, but then you do more damage based on that, and then you want to find some ways to recover that mana faster. So it is going to have a small penalty, some problem that you need to solve as the player when you're playing the game, but it's not intended to be debilitating, and it's certainly not meant to prevent you from using the skill as your main skill. There will certainly be the option for you to just build one skill and totally be fine. I do not want to create a game that forces players to necessarily use multiple skills unless they want to. So yeah, mana is in the game, and that's kind of opening up the options. You'll also notice I now have floating damage numbers. There's still no audio, but kind of spoilering it. But the other thing we've added is there's a level up UI. It's not super flashy at the moment, but I'm pretty happy with how it looks for where we're at. The text is glowing, which is pretty cool. These buttons don't glow when you hover them. That's something I need to do, but they do work, or at least one of the 3 buttons work. We're working on the other buttons now. I'm leveling up rapidly. But the most important part is you can see that we are now showing damage numbers. And in fact, if I take some nodes that increase my damage, you'll see the number has gone up on that. So bit of player feedback that I think is pretty critical for the game, to actually see your attacks hitting the target and then dealing the damage. Still no sound, that is coming. So that's probably it for the big update. The updates here, as I said, it wasn't huge in terms of raw content, but I do want to talk a little bit about where to from here. We have a lot to do for this game. There's a lot we want to do in terms of skills, in terms of passive trees, and to do all of that, there's a few things that I need to get in place beforehand, which means that the next update is probably not going to be super exciting unless you're interested in the coding. These codes currently are all hard-coded, so if you don't know what that means, if I go into, say, the blood arrow branch, you'll see I've mapped it all out, and you can see where the nodes are, and you can't see the lines, they're all drawn dynamically, but nonetheless, the entire tree is manual. This is fine for this early state of the game, but the problem with this is if I want to make a small change to this, whether that's the layout or maybe change a value in one of them, I have to change a file in the code, which means recompiling the code, which means when I publish an update to this game, say we were on Steam, the file size and the need to the change that would be caused would be much bigger. We want to read all of this from JSON. So there's going to be a whole process to take all of this stuff that I'm currently doing all manually and make it read from basically a text file, something similar to this, where it'll say, this node is positioned here, it's connected in this way, it does this, it does that. I've done some of the infrastructure to do that, but not enough of it to really get the whole way there, and so that's really what's going to be the focus going into next week. Or for the next week, is to make that JSON. The reason we want to do that is because we want to start adding a lot more skills. Right now, we only have the 3. We have the attack, which is blood arrow. We have multiple projectiles, and we have a trigger skill, which is when your damage is taken. All of these things are really flagship things that we need to have there. But now that that's done, we need to start talking about scaling and having like 10, 20, 30 skills instead of 2 or 3. All of the work up until this point has been getting the infrastructure there to do that. That is now there. We just need to do that last bit of turning this into a JSON. So that's going to be the focus going into next week. But in addition to that, a little preview for you. Here's the preliminary list of skills I intend to build. I don't think all of these are going to make it go into V 0.3, but these are the ones that are in my head as the first cab off the rank. This list is obviously going to change. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but it's a mix of active skills. So we've got Blood Arrow, which you've seen. Bone Bullet, which will be like a rapid firing attack. Blood Nova, which is going to be a ranged attack, but it's going to be an AoE. Hemoport, I'm pretty proud of the name. It's going to be a blink skill, like a little dash thing, with a blood side to it. Swipe, so it's going to be our first melee attack. And then lastly, for something a little strange that I think kind of speaks to the direction we want to take this game, currently calling it Violent Pull, where it sucks in all the lootables. So you're playing these Vampire Survivors games, there's all of these lootables that you have to walk in and pick up. Why don't we turn that into an attack? So the way this will work is, in a really wide AoE, it'll pull in all of the gems, and anything they hit on the way in it'll deal damage to. For supports, we've got things like multiple projectiles, and on damage taken, those two you've seen. Pierce, which was a notable which was just a skill actually. Here on this node, I'm going to turn that into a skill. I think it's a little too powerful to just be a passive node. Certainly this early, in playtesting, we haven't done a lot of it, but what we saw is that this node is like pretty much single-handedly the most powerful node in this entire tree. We're going to make that a skill, increase area of effect size, reduce cooldowns, so that's faster attacks. And then here for, again, some more interesting ones, we've got Mana Burst. This is obviously an idea ripped from Path of Exile, but it'll make a skill use all of your available mana, but then increase the damage dealt by the amount of mana spent. I want to add another trigger on movement skill, so a skill will fire when you use a movement skill. So if you use Hemoport, that will cause whatever this is attached to fire. And then lastly, Leyline. I mentioned before about having ways to regenerate mana, and this will be the first skill for that. So that's where we're at with the intent. That's what is going to be built, but there's some stuff we have to do in the background to get all of this done, so it may not be the most exciting devlog going into the next one. If you're looking for like, oh cool, you added a whole nother feature, that's going to quiet down for a little bit. Hopefully it'll start to pick back up after we get that last bit of JSON reading in. I'm also working on behind the scenes on getting new art assets in for all of these different skills, some sound effects in, some of it potentially professionally done, some of it will be done by my own mouth just to have something placeholder. For music, I'm not worrying about it now. I have some ideas about who to approach and how to approach that, but I'm going to worry about that another time. We're working on character designs for this game. We've got 2 other ones that we want to do as part of, it probably won't be in 0.3, but maybe 0.4. So there's a lot that we're putting into this. I'm pretty excited about it. It really feels like the foundation now has been laid. Now it's about, building the house, as it were. So that's where we're at with Vampire Survivors. Bit of a longer devlog, talking a bit more about what's going on. Not a lot to show for the code. I guess if you're still interested quickly about that, a lot of the code for the mana is handled the same way as we are doing for HP. Very, very similar paths, except that with the mana, it's all happening after a skill is used rather than when you're attacked. For the level up screen, nothing too fancy there, nothing too crazy. There was some refactoring where we now calculate level ups after you close the screen rather than just immediately doing it. But that's all pretty minor stuff. So yeah, nothing too exciting to show on that front, but a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and it's probably going to be about a few slow weeks. Maybe the next week and the week after it'll be a bit slower, but then after that I expect hopefully things start picking up. So yeah, that's Vampires versus Aliens. Still waiting for a better suggestion for the name, and thanks for watching.